G'day groovers, rockers, and in between. This is Vinyl Vibes. I'm your host, Jack Hodgins. Today, we are talking with legendary Australian guitar player, Tim Gaze. Tim has been playing in bands since the late 1960s, with his first major band being Tamam Shud, which he joined at the age of 16 in 1969. He would go on to play in many other bands across the 1970s, such as Kahvas Jute, Ariel, the Stevie Wright Band, and John Paul Young's All-Star Band. More recently, Tim has received his PhD in Creative Industries, and today teaches guitar lessons at Brisbane College. G'day Tim, and welcome to Vinyl Vibes.
G'day Jack, thanks very much, and glad to be online talking.
Let's start off at the beginning. You were born in 1953 in Melbourne, Victoria. Do you remember much of your childhood?
Oh yeah, I do. Yeah, I do. Yeah, I can remember back when I was about. I was born in Victoria, but it was about a year. I was about a year old, and the folks decided to move up to Sydney. His dad was in radio. He got a job being an announcer for TGB in Sydney back in those days. So I guess that would have been 54, 55, I guess. Mm. So I remember when I was about 5, I remember we had a bit of. I still remember seeing the vinyl records scattered on the floor, and me looking at the labels and seeing things like the Coronet label. I think that was like an 8-sided green label. Anyway, I can remember a lot of that. But the thing musically, there was this person that lived across the road in a house, and I don't even know how I met them. It's like this older woman, and she had a piano in the front room. And somehow or other, I got to be able to go in there and just tinker around on the piano. So that was my first introduction to like a musical instrument when I was about 5, I guess. So I remember that kind of stuff vaguely. That was in North Sydney, and back in the day when I was about 5. Yeah, so when that was 59, something like that.
In saying that, like you're talking about the records on the floor. I mean, what was some of your early, like in terms of the music you were listening to? Like, what are some of the songs that come to mind?
Well, gee, when I was that age, I can't really remember, but it was stuff that was Mum and Dad's record collection, I guess you'd say. What they had, Shirley Bassey, stuff like that, different bits and pieces. And I remember one album in particular, which was like a folk thing, but it was really heavily rhythmic. And I think it was Eastern European stuff. It was like piano accordions and drums and all kinds of rhythmic things, and really melodic. Lots of great sort of almost chanting and stuff. Very odd sort of stuff. I think it might have been Hungarian, actually.
Yeah.
And I thought, and that later on in life, and more so recently, I sort of connected back more with that, where music from those areas comes from and how it's influenced. I mean, it was those kind of influences that with Dick Dale, and the surf stuff, and that came from his grandparents and stuff like that through a Lebanese connection. I think there's part of it. Yeah, so it's really interesting, all that. I get a lot of the rhythmic and melodic stuff is very strong with me, and I put it down to those early sort of recordings, I think.
And you mentioned the surf, like rock kind of there, and of course we're talking like more the early 60s here now. Yeah, so what were some of like the 60s sounds? Because that would have probably been more like the stuff that really got you into music.
Well, kind of, yeah. I mean, I was still a little bit before. I was still a bit young then, but I do remember, stuff like Little Paddy. I mean, the Atlantics, of course, Little Paddy and the beach stuff and Bandstand and all that, which was a bit more commercial. But there was a lot of, surf stuff going on in those days as well. But I was more into the rock and roll, I guess, when I was a kid, 15, 16. Listening to things like Cream and Jimi Hendrix in the mid-60s, I guess. I was listening to a fair bit of stuff, I guess, by that stage.
Of course, a big moment for you came on your 11th birthday when you got your first guitar.
Oh, yeah. It was a bit of a shock. It was actually my brother's guitar. I used to go to work and I used to nick it out of the cupboard and play it. And I put it back again because I didn't think he'd know about it. My 11th birthday comes around and he goes, I know what you've been doing. I said, what do you mean? He said, I know you've been taking the guitar out and playing it. And I said, yeah, I guess so. He said, well, you've been playing it a lot more than I have, mate, so yeah, you may as well have it. So happy birthday. He gave it to me. So that was pretty good of him. I thought that was pretty cool. So it was his fault that I went on to keep playing the thing. which is kind of great.
And I mean, how back then, how did you learn how to play guitar back then? Like, did you get lessons? Because I mean, you picked it up pretty quickly. I mean, you were described as a prodigy by the age of 16. I mean, yeah, how did?
Well, I don't know about people said stuff like that, but not, it's not. People said a lot of stuff, but I just started playing because I just picked it up really and started learning by ear, and there were other friends I had too that were into guitar as well, and I had mates. I had a mate that used to come around and show me how to do stuff, and I got a mate of mine, Jimmy, used to come. He actually had a Strat. He actually had a real one. I think might have been a 63 Fiesta Red, like an L Series Strat, if we'd only known in those days. And he actually showed me, showed me how to play the guitar solo in Hey Joe, I think it was, yeah. And I was astounded. Like, wow, that's fantastic. So it was things like that. Really there were no resources anywhere like there is now. It was all just what your friends heard, or how you shared stuff, or mainly always listening to records. Really, that was it. Listen to the radio and listen to vinyl. And that was it. And it was great because you could still, if I was listening to how to work out a guitar solo or something like that, and it was all too fast, I could always turn the 33 and a third record speed down to 16 and what if it was 16 and 1/6 or something? It was
1/3 or something like that.
1/3 or 1/4. Yeah, it was, and it was half the speed, so it dropped it down exactly one octave. So it was all in tune and everything, but just slow.
Yeah,
fantastic. We had great tools. Really, you were using your ears. That was mainly what you were using was your hearing skills. So really that part of it became, those skills became, quite honed, I guess you'd say. Whereas now there's a lot of other things for learning, via either tablature or the internet or whatever, and tutorials and all that kind of stuff. But I try to say to some of my students, use your ears, listen. When I sit in my way, sometimes I say, listen to the song. Don't worry about trying to read it and follow it. Just listen to it and get used to what you're listening to, so you can, you can hear it. Oh yeah, I know that sounds like a D chord. Because of the voicings, you know what I mean? Like the way they're structured, you get used to. I remember you doing that, just listening to records and going, it sounds like I couldn't maybe pick what key, but I could hear a chord shape and go, yeah, that sounds like a G because of the way the notes was stacked in the chord. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and that helped me to sort of work stuff out.
Doing it that way, the older way, like listening to the records, has made you a better guitar player in that sense.
Well, I think it's made me, it's given me more room to be for spontaneity when I need it. If I'm playing some music on it where I'm just making stuff up as I'm going along, I think by listening all the time it helps you. It gives you more options about where things can go and how they go and how they flow and all that kind of stuff. So you're kind of listening for that instead of kind of doing it note by note and sort of trying to join them up. But you were saying you're a musician yourself.
Yeah, yes, I
Jack
am.
as well, yeah. So that's interesting that you're doing radio. Are you a guitar player too?
Yeah, I play a bit of guitar. Yeah. More rhythm.
A bit of guitar, yeah.
More rhythm.
That's fantastic because rhythm. When I was starting to play, I was very keen on playing a lot of notes and a lot of solos and on and on and on and all that kind of stuff. And the rhythm side of things really I didn't get to appreciate till a bit later on, after working with people and after people that were older than me, and saying to me, geez man, you can play a lot of notes kind of thing, and I'm going, oh yeah, well that's what I want to do, and I wasn't thinking a bit of older mentoring stuff to wise me up into the rhythmic side of it, really, because playing a lot of notes and guitar solos is fantastic, but really the backbone of all that stuff, for a lot of it anyway, is encased in rhythmic stuff. It's all rhythmic.
Definitely.
So, and I didn't realise that until a bit later.
I think you were age 14 when you joined your first group, Stonehenge. I mean, do you remember much about kind of that group?
Yeah, a little bit, yeah. We were mainly doing covers. We weren't. I don't think we were doing any originals at that stage, and that was with Warren Ward was the bass player. We had the Ward brothers, Warren and Ross Ward. Warren was a bass player, and he'd been playing with the Flying Circus at that stage, but he'd left them, and so he was playing bass. Ross, his younger brother, was playing guitar. He was playing. I think he had an Epiphone Casino. It was pretty good. Nigel Macara was playing drums, but Stonehenge was we were doing stuff like Traffic and things here, and a couple of Led Zeppelin, songs, bits and pieces, maybe a couple of Hendrix things, different things like that, to get us used to playing. We just did local gigs. We just seemed to get gigs, local dances and stuff, police boys clubs, around the place. It was a lot easier. Seemed like a lot easier to get the gig in those days than it is these days. I tell you, you don't have to have so much stuff ready to go. And that was good fun. Stonehenge was a great little band, and we had good fun for a while there. And we were still playing as a band then when Nigel actually, we knew about this band Tamam Shud. We knew who they were. We knew they, we thought they were kind of like a surf band kind of thing. And one day Nigel turned around and he said, "Mate, you hear that? Tamam Shud, they're looking for a guitar player, I said, "Oh yeah." He said, "Mate," why don't you have a go for it? See if you can get the gig."
Yeah.
And I went, "Oh," and I don't even know why that came about, but at the time it seemed like I thought, well, that could be pretty good. That could be, look what they're doing. They're an original band, they're writing original music. They've done music to film, like surf film. I mean, when I thought about it, and I thought about what was driving me as a young music person, they were like the top of the heap to be able to do original music in a band and play gigs and do all that kind of stuff was like a dream, So I thought, fantastic, I'll go do it.
Yeah.
So I got in touch with them and went up and had a rehearsal and that was I started playing with them.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, and being so young, I would assume, like, given how those guys were like already writing music and all that, they would have probably been a bit older than you. How was that for you, being younger than them and playing with them? Yeah, interesting. Yeah, well, it was okay. It was all right. I felt pretty comfortable. I didn't feel like I was out of my depth or any of that sort of stuff. I was just focusing on the music. I was just getting used to their stuff and playing. Well, they had a house up on the northern beaches there at Whale Beach at that stage, and they kind of, for the most part, I think Lindsay and Pete lived there, and Danny lived somewhere. He was in Balmain, and I was at Newport. I was still with my folks at Newport, so that was just down the road from Whale Beach, really. So we'd rehearse, we'd rehearse like every day, and we actually rehearsed. We were quite methodical with our rehearsal stuff, and going through new stuff and rehearsing a lot of the time, which was great. So I was just getting used to that, and there'd be, there was a couple of jokes about, oh yeah, he's not even old enough to have a driver's license, blah blah, so things like that, and there was also another aspect where those guys are getting more aware of the health food stuff and all that, and there's me eating a pie and having a can of Fanta. But there were little things like that. For the most part, it was a really great way to continue on in my mind at that stage. I thought it was great. It was a great opportunity, and I was very thankful for that. Yeah, look, and do you remember much about the recording of the what was the group's second album? What was your first album and only album with them? The Goolutionites and the Real People. Do you remember much of? Yeah,
I do remember quite a bit about that. Yeah, it was really good. That was a studio in Sydney called United Sound. So that was the first album I'd ever played on.
Yeah,
that was my first recording. So that was great to go in and do that. And one of the guys in the business who we got to know really well after a while, and who did a lot for Australian music, was a guy called John Brommel, and he produced it for us. But it was United Sound Studios in close to Chinatown in Sydney. I think it might have been an 8-track setup. It was basically all live except for vocal and a couple of guitar overdubs and piano, because I liked a bit of piano on there too. So there wasn't a lot of overdubs. We tracked, because in those days you played all the time, you gigged all the time. all that material all that new material, the Goolutionites material, we'd been playing and performing at gigs for a few months. So I'm not sure what date that was recorded. It might have been halfway through the year, something like that, or earlier in the year. But not a lot of time spent playing it, but a fair bit, probably rehearsing it up really to before that. And when we put it down, really, we just put them down pretty well one after the other. I think we recorded the whole thing in like 12 hours, I think. No mucking around. It was like bang, bang, bang.
Yeah.
Record it live and a couple of overdubs, and then they mixed it and they were out of there, you know. So it was pretty quick. So yeah, that was good. That was a great experience doing overdubs and vocals and percussion and, you know, bits and pieces. It was really good. Yeah.
I mean, did you get much like say in like the writing process? Like, you know, I mean, there's some fantastic like lead stuff on that album. Did you because you would have wrote your own lead?
Well, I did. I wrote my own lead, unless there was something that you know, Lindsay might have. Lindsay was the main writer, right? He wrote just about all that music. You know, we as a band we interpreted, you know, his songs, I guess you would say, and we played them. But there'd be times, you know, in rehearsal he might have said, "I've got this melody," or there might have been a riff in a song, you know, where we all played the riff together. Well, he would have written that, you know.
Yeah.
But it was rare that he would actually say, "I need you to play this." Mostly it was just left up to the creative, you know, stuff coming from each player. And that's another reason why I thought it was great, because there was all that freedom. And that's what helps you, you know, develop as well. So all those spontaneous playing things were terrific. And sometimes there'd be something here and there, but usually it was left up to the feel that the players in the band generated. If there was something wasn't right, I guess we would stop it and go, wait a minute, that's not working, we need to try this. Yeah. But, you know, we would just work through it, I guess, and rehearse. And that's formulate it and get it going well and get it going right to how we thought it should be.
And of course, 6 months into that group, you quit the group and you form Kahvas Jute.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, how did all that come to be? Yeah.
Oh, well, that's a sort of a big story, and you know what bands are like. They can be 1 minute they're humming along, and the next minute there might be a problem somewhere, or someone's got a problem with something, or something goes down, and you know people end up disagreeing with things here and there. So at that stage of my life, which might have been a bit of a late bloomer, I guess. I sort of felt that it might have been the right thing to do was to go and start that band due to various influences. But and it's a great thing that I did really. I ended up, you know, meeting Dennis and Bob and doing more recording with them in later years, which was great, and that was terrific. And we did some, you know, there was some great music generated with Kahvas Jute as well. And that album was recorded in the same year. Yeah. That was being the first album to be recorded on their new Festival Records Infinity label. From memory. So it was we're sort of breaking a bit of ground there, which was great, and industry support and all that, which is terrific. Pat Alton produced that album, the late great. So there was some good moments with that as well, played live, but then things as they do, things came up again, and then it was decided that they wanted to continue as a three-piece outfit, so I was no longer required. So I basically went, well, there you go. That's showbiz. I thought, well, I don't think I have done enough with Tamam Shud yet. So I basically rang Lindsay up and said, and he knew about what was going on. I said, well, so what are you up to? And how would you feel about teaming up again and doing some more? And he said, sure, mate, come on back, all good. So that was good. So I went back for more of that, because I really fantastic songwriter, Lindsay, in my humble opinion, and I always found him really creative. And like most really creative people, you know, you got to take the good with the whatever else. But really, the musical stuff and the lyrics and the musicality of the whole thing was appealed to me a lot. Yeah. So I was, you know, glad to go back and continue on with that. And that was great, because we ended up doing Morning of the Earth after that in 72. So terrific that worked out, yeah.
I mean, listening to those records, I mean, like it has a very it has a classic 70s sound on it. I mean, how did you get that sound back in the 70s? Like, what guitars were you using? Amps were you using? Like any other gear? Like,
well,
yeah,
it wasn't that sophisticated. Good question, Jack. Yeah, I mean, these days, I'll go out to do a gig. Maybe if it warrants, I might take a couple of electrics or something, and maybe I might need an acoustic and all that. Well, in those days, mate, it was just one guitar.
Yeah,
I just had the one guitar. So with that, when I started with the Shud, I actually bought my first Stratocaster before I joined them. I'd already bought my first Strat. When I started work, I bought my first Fender Strat, and it was costing me $4 a week. I remember, because I was earning $16 a week. So there was enough there to buy a guitar, which is great. So that I started off with the Shud with the Strat. I think due to things like Cream and Clapton sound and all those kind of things, I opted to switch over to a Gibson. So when by the time the recording for Morning of the Earth came around in 71, late 71, we recorded that in Melbourne. I'd already had the SG Custom. Yeah, that'd be a 1970 guitar. So that was the one guitar I used, and that was it. That was just and the same amp, which was an Australian company called Leonard. I don't know if you remember hearing about Leonard amps, but that was like a 150 watt head with two quad boxes. That was crazy. Now I look back, so I ended up just using one quad box with that, and that was my sound most of for all that recording. And I didn't start using a Fender Twin till later on. Yeah, that was a Leonard amp for all that stuff.
Yeah, okay.
And no, I don't. The foot pedals, I think I had there might have been a wah-wah, and there might have been a fuzz box, probably a homemade. Somebody went together a homemade distortion pedal, and that would have been it.
Yeah, okay.
Sure. And that was sophisticated enough, So really, for the sound, just all to do with drive, either amp drive or distortion overdrive pedal. Yeah, and that was it. I didn't use any echoes, units, or anything like that at that stage. I mean, there would have been people around that were, for sure, but I guess it just didn't happen like that for me at that stage.
I mean, you mentioned the film Morning of the Earth, which you guys did some soundtrack work for. And I mean, have you ever seen that film? Like, did you see it at the time? I haven't seen it.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah. What did you think of it? Because I think it's just music and it's just the visual. I don't think there's any like dialogue or anything from what I've heard. I mean, yeah, tell me about that.
That's correct. There's no dialogue. It's just music and fantastic footage, courtesy of Albie Falson, who put it together without any plan. He just says that. He said he just wanted to make a really terrific surf film. So one day he just took a camera down the beach and started filming, and I think the surf just happened to be running, and away we went, and he started filming, and that was the beginning of it. And he built it from there. As far as I was trying to think what I was going to say there. Music. So the film. I have seen the film quite a few times, and I guess through the years it sort of became. There's lots of stories about the film itself, I guess, or how the music came around to be on there, and how because it was there's a guy called David Elphick who used to run Go Set magazine in those days. There's a lot involved here, so it's hard to cover all the points. But David decided that they needed some either emerging or known artists and bands to put in do the soundtrack for the film. So because we happened to be there around at the time, so Tamam Shud got asked, and we agreed to do. Initially, Albie wanted us to do the whole lot, the whole film, and then in the end, and then later it was decided, and I think wisely so, to split it up between more people. I thought that ended up really good, because you got that real nice varied album soundtrack that came out of that with Brian Cadd and Peter Howe and different people, Ticket from NZ and Terry Hannigan and various other artists. So John J. Francis, all that John J. Francis, the Simple Pen, and other stuff. So all that other great music came out of that, fortunately. It's interesting. People I've spoken with over the years have, so many people have said, Morning of the Earth is like, it's been the soundtrack to my life, man. I live by that flick, and it's like, it's had such an influence on me and all that kind of stuff. And there are a lot of people like that have been affected in that way. And so much so that a few years ago, I thought it might be an idea to go and try and do a bit of a uni thing and try to do some, see what I could muster with the uni course or whatever. And I ended up doing a thesis and 2 film projects on Morning of the Earth. That's what I did. So I wrote about it, and I made 2 new soundtracks with 18 new emerging artists and bands and groups and all that stuff, and interviews and all that. It's quite a large piece of work over about 7 years.
Yeah.
So that became, a bit of a story of my life as well. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's been a fantastic, what's the word? I won't say icon, but it's triggered a lot of great stuff.
Yeah.
And the thought for the future of music and different things. So, and I'm not the only one that's done stuff. There are other people. Andrew Kidman also did Spirit of Akasha, re-release plus new recordings of Morning of the Earth and influence recordings as well. So it's generated a lot of creativity throughout the years, which is great,
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Oh no, absolutely. And I think that song, that album came out in 72, and I think by 73 you were in another band. I think you formed Ariel. I mean, how did that come to be? Like, what inspired that change? Yeah.
Well, that was that was after. Thanks for that. After I think it wasn't that long after Morning of the Earth that so that was 72. The show was still going in 72 up until about late 72, and then it was decided there were one thing led to another, and we weren't sort of in the position, we didn't feel to be able to compete on a lot of same levels. In those days it was like, well, what you had to do, man, you had to buy a big PA system, you had to do this, the band had to do all that. And it was like, in the end, it was like, we decided, well, maybe we should call it quits. Just do some different things, basically, which bands do from time to time. That's what they do. So we decided to stop that. And Nigel got back in touch with me and said, "Oh, look, I've got Mike Rudd from Spectrum is starting a new band, and he wants me to play drums." And I said, "Oh, shit, he doesn't need a guitar player, does he?" I just blurted it straight out. He said, "Oh, I'll find out." So he did, and then Mike Rudd just said, "Yeah, fantastic, come down to Melbourne," and so we did. Yeah. And that was the beginning of the first Ariel, 1973, recording and rehearsal and recording and all that kind of all that. Which was great. More fantastic, creative, original music,
Well, it sounds like it was a very creative band, because when your first album, A Strange Fantastic Dream, came out, I mean that's a really that's a creative music, and also like creative album cover as well. I mean, it sounds like it was a really creative band. Yeah. Yeah,
it seemed like that. Well, it was there was a lot of that around. I guess there was a lot of that around in those days. You had lots of different artists, and they were all writing their own stuff. So that was terrific, really. Then I guess there were people we knew were doing that, and people like Brian Cadd or Russell Morris or other artists as well, other bands around in that era, which is lots of stuff. It was nice to be part of that still, and that album was terrific. It was terrific that we got to record that at EMI in Sydney. So that was great, terrific studio, and that was a pretty good thing. And then one thing led to another, and the opportunity to work with Stevie Wright came up, so I went for that in 74.
Yeah, and what was that like working with Stevie Wright? Like, what was he like? Is it like, just working with him?
Oh, yeah, he was a pretty dynamic sort of guy, lots of energy and, he loved singing his rock stuff, and he was having a great time. There was a lot of, it was party central in those days a lot of the time as well. So there was a bit of that and a bit of this, but there was a lot of rehearsals and a lot of gigs and bits and pieces. The great thing about that was the fantastic songs from George Young and Harry Vander, and I got the opportunity to play through a lot of that stuff, which was terrific. I mean, in hindsight, I kind of wish I'd been a little bit more aware of a few things as far as being a songwriter goes and all that kind of stuff. There was quite possibly a few opportunities I may have just not picked up on in those days. I could have if I'd only been a little bit more on my game, so to speak. But I was too busy rocking and rolling and playing guitar, and that's okay too, because I'm still doing it now. So there you go.
Yeah. What were those opportunities, if you can remember, like what was kind of going on?
Well, there's one opportunity I remember, and I feel like a bit of an idiot, but I suppose I can tell you. Mate, nobody's perfect, right? That's what I'll say. Nobody's perfect.
Yeah.
So what happened, I remember seeing George Young round at the Newport Arms Hotel one day. We were just talking about, I'm not sure what we were talking about. And I remember him saying to me, oh, yeah, well, no worries. He said, look, I got this 4-track machine and I could lend that to you if you like, and you can do some stuff, bits and pieces. And I went, no, it's all right, George. I'm pretty busy at the moment. And da, right? So instead of me going, that's a great idea. Yeah, that'd be good. I wasn't on it savvy enough to take that opportunity. I kind of wish I kind of had. It might have been good. I could have learned a lot more stuff.
Yeah. From what you've kind of learned from your own experiences, for those like upcoming bands or artists, like just take on opportunities as they come, just take them on, kind of thing.
Very definitely, yeah. Because because it was easy back then to be. Well, I won't say flippant. I didn't think I was flippant, but it's easy to sort of go to be full of where you think your own journey is going, and not be aware enough of the things that are going on. Maybe at the same time, left and right of you, that might come up. That might give you a new look at something. So I very, very definitely, if there's, there seems to be more of that opportunity these days because of the way the playing field has changed so much for all musos and music people and stuff. It's a lot more of a level playing field out there now, and it's more of a, you're in charge of your own. Like in those days, you used to think about, well, I've got to get involved with the record company because I can't go any further. But these days, it's like all these tasks are down to the individual, really, aren't they? So any opportunity and I find myself doing things with people now just to do them without thinking about what the outcome's going to be. It used to be all about the outcome, but now the outcome doesn't seem. It's not the main. It's not the main driver. Like you're saying, that's a good thing. Take any opportunity, especially if you're getting to create, because it could. The opportunities to turn that into something that's going to bloom is probably pretty good, I would think.
And I've read too that after you played with Stevie Wright, you had some time in the in John Paul Young's band. Do you remember much about? Do you remember much about that?
Yeah. I remember a bit about that. Yeah, I was kind of those guys were about 10 years older than I was, so there was a bit. There's these guys, drinking whiskey and playing poker and stuff, and I'm going, what are they doing? What's going on? I was in a rock and roll band, so I was a little bit. That band was a little bit more out of my depth, but not. But I really. I guess when I thought back, I think about the guys who are in that band, and I think about them now, mate. I have a lot of respect for all of them because they kind of. I was a bit of a loose cannon. They kind of put up with me a little bit, but they also tried to, wise me up as well. Before that, I don't think I was listening to. I wasn't such a good listener. But ever since those, probably halfway through the 70s, there I've tried to be a better listener. It was a pop band, it was a pop rock band, I guess, in a way, but it used to rock pretty good.
Did you ever get to record while you were part of the JPY group, or was it just playing live?
No, I didn't get to that. That was the different thing. I just played live with those guys. It was like when the opportunities to record came up, I guess for Stevie in '74 and then JPY in '74. I think that was that. I think both of those musical
occurrences were like, they would have been being run by, would have been album production stuff, and that would have been being run by George and Harry, and I reckon they would have had, they got who they got to record, and that was what they did. Those guys were so prolific, so the production stuff would have been, they would have known exactly what they were doing. So yeah, no, I was just doing the gig stuff, and that was great.
Recently, you just received your PhD in creative industries, and yeah, I mean, how was that moment for you getting that?
Pretty fantastic. I mean, it was like it's probably the hardest thing I've ever done by far, especially dealing with learning about trying to be an academic. That's like, it's not it's definitely not where I started, but I figured it would just be a good thing and an opportunity to try and broaden my learning, I guess, in different ways, and to investigate, the film, The Morning of the Earth, and how it influenced people and other music people and new music people and all that kind of stuff, which it did. It worked out very well. As in lots of things with showbiz and all that kind of stuff, timing's pretty important. So when it came time to graduate, which was in 2020, after 7 years, that's when everything was shut down because of COVID, and everything was very quiet. And things that were kind of on the boil then, or that were like going forward, everything kind of stopped. I'd have to think about how I would go the next step, the next phase of this thing would be investigating the influence of music from Eastern Europe and around the Mediterranean on what happened with surf music. It's a pretty big question, and it's pretty involved, but that was part of what I was looking at, continuing with. But I've become so busy teaching now that I haven't really had a lot of time to put into that. I've basically just been doing guitar teaching and organising and directing band stuff. So yeah, maybe I'll get to more of that musicology study stuff when I get a bit of time. I can do it because it involved a lot of things. It involved going over there and doing this and exploring this, and I'm not sure if that could still happen. It may. I'll just see what happens. But it's pretty interesting because just that connection of the connective stuff that where Dick Dale came from with that with the from Isalud, and that was like a semi-Arabic kind of riff. So I asked Jim, I said, well, did you bring much of your cultural heritage into the music you were playing as the Atlantics when you were writing stuff like, Bombora and all that? And he looked at me and he said, very much so. I'm onto it here. I'm onto something about the cultural musical stuff that's gone into, and the stuff that appeals. And then I started thinking about what is it about this area, these regions with the musicality, and then I started thinking, well, maybe it's because it's something to do with the water, because if they're around, it's all the Mediterranean areas, all and one thing led to another. Anyway, I'm still kind of interested in following that kind of crazy idea, and I want to find out more about that, but I'll see how I go. Because there's something causing that connectivity between those areas and the elemental part of water and surfing that seems to work so well, especially with film, music, and surfing. Yeah. It really is very interesting. I find it just really quite intriguing.
Yeah, and look, I mean, a little bit earlier you mentioned that you've been doing guitar lessons like with people. I mean, are you taking on new students for any of the listeners that may want to get guitar lessons from you?
Oh yeah, sometimes I do. I'm always open to inquiries and stuff. Sure, that's fine. And these days, I mean, you can do lessons after a fashion, via Zoom or whatever like that as well, depending on the level of people you're interacting with and all that kind of stuff. I mean, it's different with very very young students. Maybe it's not so ideal, but
with older people, you can sort of communicate pretty well via the Zoom app or whatever. Of course, there's nothing like in person the go. But some people just don't teach any other way except online these days. It's all open. I'm teaching at home, and I'm teaching weekly at colleges. So that's keeping me busy, which is great. I'm fortunate to be doing that.
Yeah, it all sounds fantastic, and I'm looking forward to that project you mentioned with surf music and how all that came to be. And I just want to thank you for taking the time. It's been fantastic talking with you, Tim.
Mate, that's okay. I'd like to thank you thanks for making contact and asking me. I hope there's some useful snippets in there that you can hack together, and it's nice to be able to talk about it with you, and I hope your listeners enjoy it.
That was legendary Australian guitarist Tim Gaze. If you like this interview with Tim and want to get guitar lessons or find out more about his time in music, you can head to his website at timgaze.com. Remember to share this episode with other music fans. And if you really enjoyed this edition, let us know. Thank you for tuning in to this edition of Vinyl Vibes. And to all you music lovers out there, stay groovy.